Hi, welcome to Northeast Ohio Media Group's online wine tasting. This is our third event. I'm Kristel Hartshorn. Tonight we are going to be trying 3 white wines, and we hope you at home are sipping along and swirling along with us, with our panel of experts. As we taste this, we actually have Amanda Harnotes of Northeast Ohio Media Group, who is out with a group of wine-loving friends in Solon. We'll be checking in with her every now and then. Also, feel free to leave your comments below with all your wine questions. We'll get to as many as we can. Speaking of, our panel exists of Marc Bona, Northeast Ohio Media Group's beer and wine writer. Right next to him is Karla Walters of 750 ml, a wine bar and retailer with locations in Akron and Brecksville. And right beside me is Bill Krauss, the wine manager at West Point Market in Akron. So we have several bottles to get through to tonight. So we'd like to start by asking each of our experts which wines they brought in and explain a little bit about why. So Bill, let's start off with you.
I brought the mer-soleil's Silver, which is an unoaked Chardonnay. Great little wine, especially for those people who do not like the oakiness of a lot of the Chardonnays, and I think people are starting to go more and more to unoaked. It's kind of a neat because it's a porcelain-type bottle that literally mimics some of the concrete vats that they use for the fermentation and storage of these wines. So, great little wine, something that's neat, and the bottle's cool. So.
Oh, can't wait to taste it. And then Karla, tell us about your choice.
Sure, I brought Sofi Blanc de Blanc, sparkling from California. Sparkling, one of my favorite wines. It really goes with anything. We'll be talking about that today, how you compare with so many different foods, and you don't necessarily have to just keep it for special occasions.
Nice. And then Marc, you also got to choose one of yours, so which one did you choose?
I did. I chose the Calling All Angels Chardonnay. It's a 2012 Char from Save Me San Francisco Wine Company, which is actually a subsidiary of a larger wine group. This is affiliated with the band Train, and a lot of the proceeds go to a social agency for children in the Bay Area. I chose it, and I'm really happy about all 3 of the choices because this shows that you can look at 3 white wines in the general type of same style or group, and we're going to find they're very, very different, I think. Especially the mer-soleil versus the Calling All Angels. There's going to be a different amount of oakiness between the 2, and I think they're all pretty tasty.
Marc, you mentioned oak. Talk a little bit about that flavor in the Chardonnay.
Well, oak comes, really a lot of the flavors of a wine come from the vessel in which it's produced, basically. And I always, as I've written before, I like to kind of grade wines, especially Chardonnays, on an oak scale of 0 to 10. It's just a subjective thing, just to see how much is in it. It's a personal palate type of thing. So 0 would be, no oak, all citrus and lemony, and 10 would be like chewing on an oak log. It'll be interesting what we all kind of grade these out and what we gravitate to.
Okay. All right, so we have the first drink right here. You guys taste it. Tell us a little bit about what you taste in it for our viewers at home.
And obviously, we've gone over the basics before. A lot of people who taste wine, usually you would swirl a wine, never fill more than 1/3 of the glass. If you're into the tasting experience, wine's a sensory experience, so you're going to get different notes in the aroma that you will on the palate, and then you will on the finish too. We'll talk about the finish later, especially with one of these wines. So, but I've also been told if you swirl a Chardonnay, or excuse me, a sparkler, you could lose the bubbles. I don't know if that's true. You guys would know. But
I mean, if you swirl too hard, you're going to lose the bubbles. But really, to be tasting sparkling in these type of glasses is your best bet. It releases all of the aromas. You get to kind of get those notes working, and you can smell them a little better, taste them a little better out of a regular glass rather than a flute, since it keeps it so tight in there.
Yeah, the flute, unfortunately, is great for looking at it, but it's not great for tasting it.
That's absolutely right. Now this wine is a blend of 3 grapes. It's 70% Pinot Blanc, it is 15% Riesling, and it's 15% Muscat. So the latter 2 grapes are going to kind of sort of edge this toward a more off-dry type of feel to it. But the Pinot Blanc is similar to a Chardonnay. I read one person wrote that Pinot Blanc is Chardonnay's understudy. I love that terminology. It's a really well-balanced wine. The thing with sparklers, in France, champagnes are often made blending white and red grapes. In California, this is not all the time, but often. In California, you can do, usually, a lot of times they do all white wines, and this is from California. It's Francis Ford Coppola's winery, and they tend to lean a little bit more on the fruity side. I think they're very, not only food friendly, but really friendly for a nice sipper around. And these are all, I failed to mention earlier, these are all very, I think, moderately priced wines. Nothing here is more than $20. As a matter of fact, the Calling All Angels is $11. But what are you guys getting out of this, Sophia?
You know, I brought this because I really like how festive it is without really, having to drink it around a holiday or, if you can use it for parties, which is great. It's really food friendly, a little bit feminine in style, a little bit floral, shows a lot of citrus notes also. So it works great with seafood, a really nice complement to cheese. It's perfect for a girls' night out.
Okay, Bill, do you have anything?
And like Karla said, it's very drinkable. It's got that just a hint of sweetness to it that makes it, I tend to like this style of a bubble better than the Brut. I just have never been one of those guys that have fallen in love with Brut champagne, where this is so much easier to drink, and it's got a nice biscuitiness to it that I really enjoy.
A lot of good fruit comes through. We can talk about the food a little bit. With this, we're going to have a little bit of mac and cheese. All the food came from West Point Market. The mac and cheese, a creamy dish, creamy sauce, pastas, they really, a good sparkler will kind of cut through them. It's a good marriage. And it doesn't matter if you're making a mac and cheese with exquisite cheeses or whether you're making a craft mac and cheese for your kids. If you want a glass of wine, we really, as a nation, we really ought to be thinking that you can buy sparklers and you don't have to wait for a special occasion.
Right. I agree.
Oh, completely.
And then we also have a question online. They're asking, are white wines always sweeter than reds?
I'm going to answer that if that's okay. Not necessarily. White wines tend to be a little bit lighter in style, although I have to say, if there's some wines that are so heavily made that if you taste it and blindfolded, you would think you're drinking red wine.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right, so let's actually go to Amanda, who is out on the scene, who they are trying the wines themselves. I want to know, what do you guys think about this first drink?
Hi there. We're at a wine tasting party in Solon hosted by Shetel and Michael, and everyone seems to really like this wine. There's not a lot of white wine drinkers here, but they really like it. Michael, what do you think of this one?
Well, I should preface this by saying I'm mostly a red wine drinker. For me, there's not a lot going on in it. I don't know. I didn't like it as much as, I think Kelly liked it over here quite a bit. So maybe she can share some of the taste that she had with it.
Kelly just tried the mac and cheese with it, so we'll get back to her in a little bit.
All right, so they're trying along the food, the wines, just as we're doing here in the studio, and we have wine number 2 here. Bill, this is your wine?
Right, this is the mer-soleil, so a much more of a medium body, doesn't have the full bodiness, doesn't have a lot of the butter that most of them do, so you're going to get more of the citrusy, you're going to get lemon lime, you're going to get a little more maybe gooseberry or grapefruit on it, but a much more, you're also going to get a little bit of the that mouth-watering effect, which makes it perfect out on the patio in the summertime. It's a great summer wine. Also goes with a lot of the lighter foods. It goes great with salads, where instead of using a Sauvignon Blanc, this works real well. If you're squeezing a lemon on something, you can drink this with it. So.
Okay, and then Karla, do you have anything to add to that?
You know, I really love that this wine was included in the tasting today because it's one of my favorites. It's one of those that when people really love oak Chardonnay, they think they're not going to get the body from an unoaked Chardonnay. And I find that this has a really nice weight to the palate. It could fool you for something that's oaked because of the way that it's made. It's also very creamy, and a lot of people really tend to just think of unoaked Chardonnay being nothing but citrus. I find this really balanced, really big in your mouth, yet really cuts through with the acidity that Bill was mentioning.
Yeah, I agree 100%. This is a balanced wine. Creamy is, if I had to pick one word to define this, it's creamy. It's got great body to it. It's just got a real nice mouthfeel. It's a delicious, this is one I would want to drink alone. You know, even though wine is a food drink, it's delicious. And I think it dries out a little bit with cheese, which is kind of nice.
Now, Marc, what are we pairing with this wine? What do you recommend?
You definitely can have, we have, the three items we have on our plates are shrimp, which we'll have with the next wine. We have a cheese that is a blend called Prima Donna, and we have a mac and cheese, which is also a blend of different cheeses. Cheese and wine go together pretty well. Some people argue that. Some people say beer is actually better. It cuts through the fat. But I really think a Chardonnay just matches really well. I don't know what it is. If it's just, you see the term cut through all the time. And I really want to go back to what Karla said about the Chardonnay. It really has a very good body. It's very creamy. And this is one to dispel anyone who thinks, well, if it says unoaked, it's not going to be, you know, that,
What I'm looking for, yeah.
that good. And interestingly enough, the mer-soleil won the World Series of Wine in 2013 in Cleveland. And it was as of a best of show. It was a different vintage, but it's just I think it's a great Chardonnay. And again, it retails for $20, so it's a pretty good deal.
One of the commenters, Lynn Sherwin, she said the unoaked Chardonnay is becoming more trendy. Is this something that you are seeing more of and seeing out there?
These guys could answer that. What do you guys sell?
I would say so. You know, of course, Chardonnay is king, right? So like the oaked, buttery, people really love that. But yeah, I would say if it's about a trend, the new trend is unoaked.
Yeah, and even, I mean, our unoaked section of Chardonnays is growing all the time. So it's definitely becoming a much more popular wine.
Okay. So Amanda, I'm wondering what your people have to say about this second wine here. How are you guys liking it?
Hi. I think there's some mixed feelings here about it. There's some people who really like it and some who just not a fan. Kristen, what do you think of it?
I think it's pretty bright. It's not too heavy or full-bodied. It's pretty medium, and it's refreshing. I like it.
How about you?
I think it's great. I don't like big buttery shards, and this is really nice. It drinks really well.
Yeah. So we all seem to like it enough. Like I said, we're not big white wine drinkers here. That's why they wanted to do this tasting. So it's been very informative so far.
Between the two wines that you've tasted so far, is there any one that you prefer more?
I think general consensus here is the first one that everyone liked, but he says he likes this one much better. Why do you like this one better? So again, mixed reactions.
Okay, all right, thank you guys. And we have just poured our final wine of the night. Now, Marc, this is your wine of choice.
This is Calling All Angels, and this is a wine, one of the reasons why I like this wine, this is a real nice wine. It's the cheapest of what we have here. It's an $11 wine. It's a good sipper to have on a patio on a warm evening. You could have this with food, any of the foods we're having, but you could, it's just, or if you have a bunch of friends over and you want to open another bottle, you know, this is a wine that you would open up. And I get a lot of questions from people who say, well, you know, can you really tell the difference between an expensive wine and a cheaper wine? And one of our panelists last time had a great answer, and she said, well, sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. Now, I'm going to use, even though I don't think 20 is extraordinarily expensive, I'm going to use the example here between these wines. The mer-soleil had a lot going on. I really enjoyed it. It's very creamy. It's delicious. The Sofi has a lot. It's very fruit forward, and it's got the different grapes. It's really nice. Now we have an $11 bottle, and this Chardonnay is it's got a bit of citrus, and it's nice, but on the finish, there is no finish. And I think that's the difference between this one. The body's a little different. It's a little lighter than the mer-soleil. But I think that it doesn't have that finish. There's nothing there. It's just a simple little wine. It's pleasant. There's nothing wrong with it. I like it. It's worth $11. But I'm not getting much of a finish on it. What do you get? Do you guys agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great everyday Chardonnay. I mean, and especially, and I think right now it's actually $9.99, so it's a $10 bottle. So I think that makes it one of those great bargains right now. Yeah, and it doesn't have a lot of finish, but I still think it's a nice kind of medium creamy. It's got some decent fruits. I think it could use a little more acidity. It's just kind of it needs a little more something on the back end, but it's still, I think, for at the $10 price point, I think it's very nice.
Yeah, I think this is a good contrast to the mer-soleil that we tasted, two completely different styles. But it's very friendly. It's very friendly. I think people would really catch on to it. That's what they like, the buttery, oaky, balanced. It's really yummy. I really like it.
Okay, Karla, just to backtrack a little bit. So one of the viewers asked, Clee Wine Girl asked, do you find that men are generally not fans of Chardonnay?
Well, it depends. Yes and no. See, we get to see a lot of different customers that love a lot of different things. But do we generally get women buying Chardonnays? I would say so.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I think predominantly that's what I see also is the ladies come in and buy Chardonnay. But I think it's also, it's also, it's one of those wines that's not as seasonal as some whites.
I
agree. You see this year round. People come to buy Chardonnay year round because you can get these full-bodied, big Chardonnays that go great in the wintertime. There's still the thing you can sit around with in the evening and have a glass of wine and feel as if, ooh, I'm being warmed by this. So it's nice.
Char is I think it's the #1 white wine seller in the country, and I think Cab Sauv is the #1 red. I believe. You guys would know better than me.
That's right.
Between the 8 billion bottles you have in your stores.
And then, Marc, you were mentioning that with this last wine, it is cheaper than the others, and you do taste a difference. Do you guys agree with that?
I would say Marc was saying something about the finish, and I would agree with that. The finish on the mer-soleil silver it lingers, so it lasts on your palate for a long time, where I think this one that you were mentioning just kind of drops off. But I think if you tasted this in not knowing that it was a $10 bottle of wine, you would probably assume it's up there with the mer-soleil. I like it.
Right. Yeah. If you're not blind tasting against something else, I think this is for $10 you can't beat it.
So what somebody asked or mentioned that the mer-soleil goes well with the mac and cheese. They're having it as well. They love the bottle, and last ceramic bottle they opened up was the Lancer's Rosé.
Oh my!
Am I pronouncing that right? And why is that so funny? In the early 70s, that was the wine to get if you wanted to impress your date. Do you agree with this?
Interesting. This is before my time, so I can't answer that.
So I can kind of feel this since this Lancers was when back in the late '60s and early '70s you drank, and these are names that will some people will get a kick out of, is the Boone's Farm and Strawberry Hill and Annie Green Springs, and these were things that. But if you had a couple of extra dollars, you would get Mateus, or you would get Blue Nun, or you would get Lancers. That was a step up, and so that was fantastic. So the Lancers, that's a throwback there.
So Bill, you raise an interesting point. You and I have talked about this before, and I'm curious of what you think of this, Karla. But wine for many generations, people usually for many generations, people stuck with they drank budget beer, to put it politely, for 20 years or so, from high school, college on, and then all of a sudden they can discover wine. But it seems like millennials nowadays are jumping right into the craft beer, and good wines, and they're really knowledgeable about what they're drinking and what they're reading about.
Oh, without a doubt, it's kind of funny because I was talking to somebody today about my parents' generation drank two kinds of wines. It was Chablis and Burgundy, and it had nothing to do with French wine. The Chablis was anything white, and Burgundy was more of the color of the wine than it was where it was from. I have 3 kids that are millennials. They all drink wine, and unfortunately for me, they drink expensive wine. But it's a huge difference because you're seeing this. It's fantastic for the wine industry that the kids now are coming out of college and they aren't drinking PBR and Stroh's and Pabst and stuff like that we drank. Till I was 40 years old. Now they're drinking all the craft beers and they're drinking good wine and they're experimenting. They're not afraid to go out and try something new.
We're getting, oh, sorry, go ahead, Marc.
I was going to ask, Karla, do you see people coming in? You have a lot of younger people
Sure.
who come into both of your locations. You know, what are you seeing? Are you agreeing with that? That people are learning?
100%. I mean, we, of course, have geared our shops to only specialize in craft beer and really boutique wines for a good reason. People really of all ages, they're more educated and looking for those things that are not so mass produced and are looking for something special to enjoy. So, yeah, I definitely agree.
Okay, and we're getting a lot of commenters saying that they're getting more oak on the nose than the palate. They're saying getting an oak note from the Calling All Angels. Is it American oak? You want to take a stab at that?
I'm almost sure it would
I'm
be.
going to venture
Yeah.
and say yes, because it has a lot of vanilla notes to the wine also, which are usually a traditional
And there is
characteristic
a
of American oak.
smokiness to it. So there's some char on the barrel, but you're right. It's all on the nose.
Yeah.
It's not especially on the palate. But
Yeah,
there
it's
is
not
much-
too heavy on the palate, I don't
Not at all.
think.
Not at all.
Okay, let's actually pass to Amanda, because I know you guys have been waiting to share your thoughts on this. What do you think about this last wine?
Well, Shuttle had a really interesting observation about this wine. I'll let her explain.
To be honest, when I first smelled it, I didn't really care for the nose on the wine, but then when I drank it, it was actually my favorite of the three.
What kind of flavors did you get from this one?
I think I got a little bit of citrus,
Did you
grapefruit maybe.
did you pair it with the cheese?
I did, and I think that really enhanced the flavor of the wine.
Great. Yeah. So overall, I think the third was a favorite over here.
Okay, interesting. And it's the cheapest bottle of
It
them
is.
all, so
That's fantastic.
very
You're
fun.
all lucky people.
One of the viewers are asking, are all Chardonnays from California?
No.
I just had one recently from, of all places, Argentina. And it was
Very
an
good,
oak
yeah.
bomb. It was, I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't over the top, it was balanced, it was really nice.
Sure.
You can get Chardonnays from many places.
Yeah, all over the world, Chardonnays, other than one other white grape, is the most grown white grape in the world. And France, if you look at white Burgundies, those are all Chardonnays, and so it's a very, very popular grape.
Clee Wine Girl wants to know, does West Point Market sell more white wines than red?
No, we'll probably sell more reds, but it's also very seasonal. Wintertime, of course, reds take over, and where in the summer everybody likes a nice chilled white wine on the patio. So it's definitely runs seasonal that way. But definitely, if you compared red to white, the reds would always win out.
Okay. Marc, do we want to take away something from this wine tasting here?
Well, one little trivial point I forgot to mention when we were on the Sophia. I love this little trinket or alternative vessel. This is a can of champagne. I don't think I've ever said can of champagne before. And,
Juice box.
They should be in the same sentence, right?
and it comes with the attached straw with a little bendy. And my wife tells me that this is designed for, or maybe not designed for, but used by models who can't get their makeup too messed
interesting.
up, and so they'll just pop it or have someone pop it for them and then pop the straw in, and that's that. But it's a neat, you sell these, right? I've seen
We
these
sure do,
in
yeah.
other places. I
Yes.
love this.
And those straws are hand glued on there. They don't go through a machine. They actually hand glue each one of those.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
Hey, we should, while we're on it, since we have a minute, there's one term to learn about wine, so we have to throw a little education in here. We should talk briefly about malolactic fermentation, because it's a big term, but it's used in a lot of wines, and it's really important. You guys want to tackle it and talk about it a little bit?
When,
Yeah,
sorry,
go
Bill.
ahead. No, be my guest. Be my guest.
When somebody mentions malolactic fermentation, that's basically your cue to know that the wine's going to be pretty creamy. Mallow for something like milk, and it's going to give it that creaminess quality that we enjoyed in the mer-soleil, and this one has a little bit of hint of that as well.
Right, the malic acid is the more acidic, and then if you like people who are lactose intolerant, so what this is doing is this is a process that changes malic acid into lactic acid. So that's where you get that buttery creaminess.
You lose the harshness of the wine.
Right,
You
and
get
it
the
definitely,
buttery.
it definitely smooths it out and gives it a much more, almost a glycerin mouthfeel.
And a good point to make, not only on white wines is that used, but also in some reds.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, let's actually check back with Amanda before we go one last time. I want to know what you guys think about this wine tasting overall.
Overall, I think everybody really enjoyed it, especially because most of the guests here aren't white wine drinkers, and they all seem to enjoy all 3 bottles. Mike had an interesting observation.
So after hearing the price point, I was really impressed actually with all 3 of them. We all kind of agreed that for the price you're paying for this wine, you're really getting good quality wine.
So thanks for having us, and again, thanks to Michael and Shettel for hosting this party in Solon. So cheers to everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you guys. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And I think that concludes this wine tasting. Thank you all for joining us here at Northeast Ohio Media Group. Time flies when you're drinking wine. Thanks to our guests Karla Walters and Bill Krauss of West Point Market. And out there, everyone, for joining us. From Marc, Bona of Northeast Ohio Media Group, I'm Kristel Hartshorn, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.